North Caribbean, West Atlantic, someplace like that. I want to thank you for having me here tonight. I brought out, I think there'll be a folder on the desk or somewhere around here, in here, in case you want to look at it afterwards, something to take home. And I've never done a PowerPoint presentation like this. I've usually had it done differently. So let me see if I can get this to work the way I want it to work. See, it's already frozen. Yes.
It works.
Hey, I like that. And I'm an operations consultant. That means I try to help people improve what they're doing. We had a meeting last week. John mentioned Lunch with Lou. I've had a monthly Lunch with Lou business networking seminar. Derek happened to be a speaker there. That's why I wanted to bring up to the people that attended, Kim and Karen, that one of the things that Derek was working on came through. Very pleased about that. So that people remember me, I came up with the name Lunch with Lou. And what we do is we provide managers with solutions to improve the results that they're looking for. This is what most of you look like right now, by the way. I took this picture just about 30 seconds ago. As you know, as a manager, this is what you think of yourself. You think that you're patent. We all feel like that because the ideas that we have are great ideas. All of us feel this way. I know, if you don't, I certainly feel this way. I feel every morning. Unfortunately, as soon as I walk out the door, this is the reaction that I get when we start communicating. Sad, but this is all of us go through this. What I try to do is bring an outsider's perspective to help people get through to the results that they're seeking. And many people in manufacturing might not recognize the picture, but they certainly know this gentleman. This was the man that brought Xerox off its knees back to life in the mid-70s. His name was Robert Camp. And the one thing that was distinguishing for him was going out to Maine, LL Bean, and finding that LL Bean was able to help Xerox. And it was not only surprising, but it was very shocking to people that they could actually learn from a completely different industry how to improve what they're doing. So he called what he was doing with benchmarking, and I'm sure everybody here has either participated in benchmarking or been subjected to somebody telling them that they need to benchmark what they're doing. I'm not here to tell you to benchmark, but we're all familiar with it. It's an excellent thing, and as a manager, it's very vital that you think about doing exactly what benchmarking does for you. So all I try to do is enjoy people's conversations, listening. So tonight, anytime somebody wants to say something and ask me a question or challenge me, it's absolutely okay. And how can I be successful to help you guys be successful? It's very simple. I help people align their personnel, their policies, and their procedures. Believe it or not, what a good consultant, what I believe a good consultant should do, it's almost a mechanical process. And this is all it is. It's making sure that everybody, all the people, know what they're doing, turning a crank at the right time during what they're doing for business. And that's how I operate. This is how most of you, if you're in sales, this is how most of you get up to start the day. This is Tevye and Fiddler on the Roof getting ready to belt out, "If I Were a Rich Man." That's what sales is all about. Somehow the salesperson wants to go set the world on fire and make money. But when he shows up at the office, this is what he hears. Does anybody remember this? Anybody remember this movie? Yeah. This is what the salespeople are subjected to as soon as they walk through the not through the door, but as soon as they hurdle the transom, the high of the day is already starting to diminish. And this is what happens at the first appointment. When I went out to invite people to come to the BAMA meeting, the first person I ran into said, "Oh yeah, I'd love to come to the BAMA meeting." They thought it was an alumni association meeting. So on the second time that I went to talk to people, I ran into somebody that said, "Let's talk about BAMA." He says, "Oh, I love Obama." This is sales underperformance. And it happens to all of us as managers, and it happens to all of us as salespeople. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is overcoming sales underperformance. When you leave tonight, these are the 3 words that will help you stay motivated. If you have a passion about increasing your sales, that's number 1. And if you want to dramatically increase your sales, you have to have the confidence that you can do it. And the most important way that you can increase your sales, and everybody wants to increase sales. I don't think there's anybody that works for an employer who doesn't want to increase sales somehow, is there has to be urgency to it. You need those 3 things, and then it's a given. You're now on a downhill slope. This is what customers want from salespeople. This is what customers want from companies. They want to receive product information. Because everybody that goes out on a sales call, can you leave me some information, please? And if you notice, it's really interesting. Your customers don't want to talk to you or your salespeople. They don't want to talk to your distributors. They actually want to talk to a manufacturer's rep. It's really sad, but that's what happens. Believe it or not, this comes from a study that was done, I think it was published in January or December of just this year. About 400 companies were surveyed. And they spoke to the owners, the senior level people. And they discovered, one of the things that they discovered was manufacturers' reps, the ones from the previous, that you saw previously were the most interesting people for customers to talk to. Some companies will give them up to 20% of their time to talk to a manufacturer's rep. Now there's other slides. This was the summary of this that I took this from came from a 37-slide PowerPoint. But these are the summaries that are most germane to dealing with manufacturers and what I'm proposing to increase your sales. They would be willing to spend up to 8 hours a week, which is 20 hours of someone's time, talking to manufacturers' reps. Now, if you want to improve what you do when you're selling, you got to improve your sales calls. And most of these companies, 45% said they'd be more interested in talking to a salesperson if the salesperson had better skills. Which is, blame the victim, the poor salesperson is being shot down here. But, when somebody says to me, if you're a better salesperson, I'll spend more time with you. Well, it's not the way it is, but this is what they say. They don't spend time with salespeople because salespeople are not prepared enough. And then the most interesting and somewhat contradictory problem that people have is the customers say there's not enough face time to talk to people. They're too busy with their own policies and procedures internally to talk to salespeople. But what's interesting, they will spend, if we go back and we're not going to, they will spend time with the manufacturer's reps. And part of this, as all of us probably can guess, is manufacturers' reps have no agenda but to make a sale. Sometimes they don't care what they sell. They just want to make the sale and move on to the next customer. So they're actually very transaction-oriented. This is one of my favorite. I used to have a T-shirt with this. If you can't read it, I don't know. I'm not very literate with computers and especially on graphics. But the bottom part says Lou knows sales. In case you can't read it, it was a good shirt. For those of us that have to have a product or service, I came up for one of my clients one time with a marketing plan, and this was part of it. This showed 18 ways that we could sell our products. Now, nothing here says selling directly to the end user, but these are 18 different ways of getting a product and potentially a service sent over to an end user. And most of us in manufacturing want to sell to as many end users as we can, so we look for every different, what's known in the business community, we look at every different channel that we can to sell our product. Now the reason that this is important is some people say, well, I can't sell into that channel, I don't know that channel, they don't want to talk with manufacturers, there's all sorts of reasons. But you can come up with your own list, it could be longer, but every one of these has a different way of reaching the end user that they sell to. So obviously, if you're going to use any one of these 18 to sell, you've got to be well-versed with what the pressures are on those people in order to sell to them. It's a Herculean task, I'm sure. Now, most of us know what selling is and what a sale is. I just wanted to put down my 3 thoughts of what a sale is. I think all of us will agree that it's a transaction. Actually, it's more than a transaction. A sale is an agreement on a value. Most of us would say that that's the price, but there's an agreement on a value. Once that's made, an order can be processed, or it can start the process of fulfilling the order. And then you actually have a sale when there's a transfer of a title. Does anybody think that we need to add more to that? Or does that pretty much get down to the... Look at Ann go. How's the money doing? But the reason that I bring that up is accountants know that there's oftentimes a very, very big problem that companies have on when is revenue recognized. And they're not saying when does the sale happen, when is revenue recognized? Well, I'm not interested. If you want to expand your sale, I'm sorry?
When it's in-house.
When it's in-house. Who believes that?
I do.
Okay.
That's
What is
when
that?
I get paid.
That's when you get paid. What does it mean to be in-house? What is in-house?
Money.
The money or the purchase order? Because I don't know what you do.
The money.
The money. It's not a sale until the money's collected.
Right.
We'll come back to that. Is this familiar to everybody? Is there anything that we need to add to this? It's a sale when the title transfers, right?
No. When it's earned and measurable. You never took this exam.
But a manufacturer that has to produce is willing to start production, is willing to start development once there's an agreement on the value. You know, there's all sorts of different things that happen at companies at all sorts of different levels. So the sale is not just the sale, the revenue is, there's all sorts of different ways of looking at it. But this is when I think about a sale. There's an agreement on value, the processing of the order begins, and I just put title transfers because 3 is a good number, I was always told. Now, what companies have to do to stimulate sales is to get the end user to buy their product. So the second interesting thing that a company does, that a manufacturer does, and not all manufacturers know who the end users are, right? There's a lot of us don't know who the end user is. Hunter Douglas doesn't install, so they don't know who the end user is. Packaged food good companies, consumer product companies never know who the end users are unless they can buy the mailing list from Catalina Marketing or something. They don't know who buys Campbell's soup cans or anything like that. So manufacturers spend time on marketing, and marketing means that they've got a self-contained program to stimulate the end user or to stimulate transactions that will ultimately lead to an end user. Now, there's measurable impacts which are very important because that's what you want to measure. You want to see if you're doing something that's valuable to you. In all marketing leads to an exchange with outsiders. It doesn't necessarily mean the end user, but it means there needs to be an exchange that takes place, and most marketing ends up being creating perceptions or having a transaction of information exchange. Because marketing is not sales. Selling is sales. Marketing is assisting sales and hoping it takes place. Now, you mentioned that I went to Wharton. There was an interesting study about 3 years ago. And this is what an Ivy League business marketing professor came up with, and I'll read it in case that you can't read it. The biggest thing you as a manufacturer can do to make your outside sales force interested in selling your products is to make it financially interesting. Tuition is like $50,000 a year now. And this is the best and the brightest coming up with, you got to make it financially interesting. I don't know how much my parents spent, but I'm sure they felt that if I had that said to me in more than one class, that it was a waste of time. Because we all know it's got to be financially interesting. How many companies here use manufacturers' reps to sell? 1, 2, 3. In this study, it was very interesting. They said generally up to about 50% of manufacturers use outside salespeople, manufacturers' reps. And he's saying that the premise of the article is that number is too low, and I personally agree with it. The benefit of manufacturers' reps is they have their nose on the ground, right where sales transactions take place. It's very important. Every business needs to have what would be considered the equivalent of manufacturer's reps. And the reason the good manufacturer's reps are beneficial to a company is they can provide the feedback to the manufacturer on what the marketplace, the end users really want. Most of us that deal with employees as salespeople don't get good feedback from our employees. Employees have agendas. Manufacturers reps only want to do a transaction. So they're going to tell you that your stuff is not good, and if a manufacturer's rep tells you the marketplace is not accepting it, you're more likely to believe a manufacturer's rep than you would be your own employee. Because I know, I've managed salespeople before, no matter what we have, the color's wrong, the size is wrong, the delivery is wrong, even though we're better than all the competition, the salespeople can't sell because that's we've got to change. Instead of selling what we have, that's just the normal thing. But the most important reason why this guy says manufacturers reps are so vital for people's businesses, and we saw this again on the study that I referenced earlier, manufacturers reps actually have more time available where the buyers want to spend their time. And that's the reason, if you want to sell, you need a manufacturer's rep to do that because they have the buyer's attention. They've got the engineer's attention, et cetera, et cetera. Now this is another, this used to be a button of mine when I had more, it's receding there. I used to go to chambers of commerce meetings and meetings like this, and I would ask people that I met and thought were valuable contacts to call my salesman. Engage him in a conversation, and then say, oh, by the way, I met Lou, can I talk to him now? Drove my salespeople crazy. Because they thought that I was belittling, that I was more aggressive than they were, or that they weren't understanding why the products needed, why what we needed to do needed to go out more. Every one of you should be wearing this, or have this on your computer monitor, or have this somewhere in your office. This is not an egocentrical button. What this means is that people know what I can do for them. And when you're in business, people need to know what you can do for them, or they're never going to call you. So this is to make sure that I fully express what my skill sets are, what my capabilities are. This has nothing to do with flattering me. It's not, my wife hates the picture. And this is something that's very important. A couple of you know that I used to have molded cables and wire harnesses made. That is a very generic concept. Molded, so most people don't even know what molded cables are. But for people that were looking for products, they knew exactly what potentially I could do for them. I didn't say I made computer cables, I didn't say I made these kind of cables, because that would pigeonhole me and I'd never get out of there. I've got a client right now who does telephone training. And after 2 months of thinking, and I need everybody to help me here because I'm not good with this, so nobody, does that look like a cougar to you? Is that a good logo? If I could figure out how to put the headset around the cougar, would that be good for a call center user group association? It looks like a cougar. Now they know it's a cougar. The reason that I mention this is if you want to sell telephone training, or the proper use of accepting customer service or help desk or inside sales training, you need to speak to people that use the telephone relentlessly. And I said, well, let's start an association. And the target would be these people who are the prospects for you. So guess the association members become our manufacturers reps. I don't know if you could read this. Hey, Colligan, man. Is anybody old enough to remember these commercials? They were on for like 30 years. I had a client that wanted, in the worst way, to break out of one marketplace where they dominated and move into another field. And we test marketed sending company information and a postcard to the Culligan dealers. And we said, please, we've already stamped the envelope, can you please sign on this line and send this to Culligan around Chicago, wherever they're based, because we'd like to be an approved vendor. We test market this with 150 or 160 some odd Culligan dealers. 12 of them filled out dealer agreements on the basis of the first letter that we sent without any contact to us. They just sent it back in the mail to us. And the Culligan people in Illinois called us and said, this is what you need to do in order to become part of the approved vendor for us. So that we turned the Culligan dealers into manufacturers reps for us, which was perfect. And what was even better, about 6 months later, we went to a trade show, and some of these Culligan dealers, since the trade show was in Chicago, Rosemont, is that the Chicago area?
Yes.
Yeah, we went to the Rosemont Convention Center. The Culligan dealers were so pleased that they discovered what we had done that this man from Siemens walked over, and our customer, the Culligan dealers, were showing how our product worked because I'd spent a lot of time changing the marketing materials, the installation guides, etc. So they explained, and Siemens became a customer of the... So we turned our own customers into manufacturers reps for us. And this is the kind of thing that you want to do, because a salesperson that is employed by a company cannot cover. Remember, there's 18 different ways that your product can move to the market. There's no way a company can have enough people, enough feet on the ground on your payroll to cover all these possible areas. You have to be very innovative and very unrelenting in coming up with really inexpensive ways to make your customers and your prospects into manufacturers reps for them. Remember I said I made wire harnesses and molded cables. I got calls from around the country when I did one small thing. There was a distributor who was the largest independent distributor for Symbol Technologies. These are barcode scanners. I went up and spoke to these people in the middle of Kentucky and met all the salespeople there, and all of their customers were suddenly given my company's name, because they always needed small quantities of cables. They needed cables that Symbol wouldn't make. You know, Symbol would make a 3-foot cable, and they needed a 12-foot cable, all sorts of things. That sales group at Blue Star became my manufacturer's reps. And it was very, very simple, but it was very effective for me, coming up with permission of the purchasing people to do that. And I started doing a little bit of business with Blue Star, but a lot of business with their customers, because I was able to use their unpaid salespeople. It was wonderful. How many of you know Molex? It's a great company. They were started in the 1920s. Won't go into that part of the story, but 30 years later, they hired a manufacturer's rep who put them on the map. And they only hit $1 million in sales the late 1950s, early 1960s. So they were probably bumping along $40,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in sales for many, many years. Dale Miller plus one other person put Molex on the map, got them into all sorts of places. Hot Point Appliances, all sorts of places. One person, because he had the contacts, and all he was interested is making the transaction happen. He figured out he didn't need to be managed. He knew he knew where he was going and who he needed to speak to. It was wonderful. Now, for those of you that think that manufacturers reps is something that's difficult for you, how many of you sell a product and get cash when the product is sold? Oftentimes, you've got a bank or finance company who's your partner. They're your outsourced finance department, just like, I love David Ogilvy, great advertising guy. If you hire an ad agency to prepare your marketing pieces, your sales slips, etc., you've outsourced creative things that you guys could do internally. So manufacturers reps are outsourcing your sales, and there's a great transition that you can do. So the question that people need to have here is, can you add manufacturers reps? Yes, you can. Will it antagonize some of your employees? Probably not. At the beginning, you probably can make interesting ways to transition to manufacturers reps. The question is, should you do that? There's no question you should outsource your sales if you can. It's a spectacular way to grow business of all sizes. Do you want to integrate it into what you're currently doing? The answer is yes. Can you transition to manufacturers reps? That's an unresolved question. Except I can help you do that. These are the things that I can help you with if you want to have a conversation about manufacturers reps. How to locate them, training them is very important. Analyzing what different material they should have. These are all the ways that I can help you bring them on. And I appreciate your time tonight. Does anybody know the name of this painting? I won't describe all the things that's going on in here. It's the agony of gluttony.
Now, the concern with manufacturing reps, to me, and one reason we would never do so, is that they represent other companies. They can represent your competition.
Sure.
So their job is to get the transaction, no matter
Right.
what. So to me, you've got a conflict of interest, or you can set up a conflict of interest.
Well, that's why you have to choose the reps.
Yeah, you would
There's some-
It's the same thing as a business consultant, having and training the right people inside your facility, though, to provide that service.
I know that, we'll get to you in one second. I know that there are people that have access to distributors that you want, and they don't carry your line, they want complementary lines.
Right.
You know, there's people, I used to buy power supplies. There's one company that I used, represented 40 or 50 different power supply companies. He wanted to be known as Mr. Power Supply or Power Supply King. There's other people that they want lines that are completely different. And you just have to find the agencies, and that's why it takes a lot of work. My experience is always that the reps can open doors for you when you find the right ones, a lot faster than your own salespeople can ever do.
It was kind of to John's point, I use sales reps, lots of sales reps. In fact, my suppliers are my sales reps. I get leads from them. I found that a lot of times I'm in a portfolio of competitors, and I've ended up doing work for and getting work from competitors, and we've become fast friends and help each other out. So, you know, it actually works out pretty well.
The other side is you can set up your own manufactured reps without having them as manufactured. It's word
Right.
of mouth.
Right.
So just
Right.
providing the right service.
And you have to, that's right, and you have to manage them the right way, because that becomes an exclusive channel for you. And I'm not saying that exactly, I mean, there's a number of companies that take their highest producers and say, rep us now. We don't want you as an employee, you're making good enough money. It's time for you to really grow your business. We'd offer you to be a rep and we'll give you this territory or whatever you, I mean, I had to do that with one company that I did work with. They wanted their top producer out of there because nobody else could produce with him there. And we set him up. So it's not an unusual thing. It's very common. Thank you very much.